Welcome everyone to Tohono Virtual Events. This session is on overcoming obstacles and turning challenges into opportunities, presented by the EPCC Mental Health Committee members of Crisol Escobedo and Luis Bargan, both philosophy and criminal justice instructors. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to our presenters.
Thank you, Patricia, and welcome everybody. I'm Crisol Escobedo. I teach philosophy.
Hi, everybody, and welcome again. This is Lou Barragan, and I teach criminal justice and homeland security courses.
And we're both members of the Mental Health Committee, which you'll learn about in a little bit. But well, let's get started. So again, thank you all for coming here. I want to start off with just the rationale of why we decided to do this. So I'm pretty sure it's hard to imagine, but both Louis and I were students at some point. And as a matter of fact, I still consider myself a student because there's so much for me to learn. And oftentimes when we see instructors, we think that, they always had a love for education and that struggling with, their academic life was not an issue for them. And I think that is not necessarily the truth. At least it wasn't for me. I don't know about you, Louis.
Yeah, no, I agree. Starting with the college experience, coming out of high school, I knew college was a good thing. A lot of my friends had already lined something up. But for example, I was one of those that I really didn't have a clue. And I had to find something out really quick. And I'll kind of talk about that some more later.
Yeah, it was the case with me too. I knew I had to go to college, and that was thanks to my mother. She was always pushing me to get a college degree because she never had the opportunity to do so herself. And at first, I just went to college because I didn't really know what else to do. And I didn't have much information about what I wanted to do or what I wanted to be. And I figured that there's a lot of students currently that are in that precise situation. So I wanted to share some of the challenges that I have faced uh, when I was a student, or that I faced as a student, in hopes that maybe you know you would be inspired to just also take some of the recommendations we have on how to deal with any issues. So that's the rationale for why we're doing this. I'd like to just remind everybody that both Louis and, well, as far as I know, Louis, you're not a healthcare professional, right?
No, I'm not. No.
Okay. So,
I
and
admire them and respect them a lot, but I know I'm not.
same here. I do have a degree in psychology, but it is a bachelor's degree. And I've had great research and clinical opportunities while I was studying psychology, but by no means am I a licensed healthcare professional and don't claim to be. So I want to just let everybody know that whatever you're hearing here today is not to be taken as clinical advice. It's not the same thing as going to a professional if you have specific issues, but it's just something that we thought hopefully would be helpful.
I agree.
So let's talk about the student experience. So again, want to just say and make sure that this comes across clearly, that we are not going to be here to provide any sort of mental health recommendations or prescriptions. That's best left to a professional. But what we do want to do is talk about something we know very well, which is the student experience. And granted that the student experience has changed over time. So when I was a freshman in college, was a long, long, long time ago. Uh, maybe even before some of you were born. So I understand that times have changed, and this is not going to reflect what everybody is experiencing in college. Different people have different experiences. So I'm just talking about some. Okay. And I saw a hand go up. I don't know if that was just by mistake or if somebody wanted to share.
I think you
Okay.
lowered it, Crystal. Yes.
Okay. All right. So then let's talk about the college experience. So when we go out to any college, whether it be EPCC or UTEP, there's always this sense of like college going culture, right? Some places more than others. And I know at Community, we're working really hard to bring that to you. But, usually we see other students relax talking to one another, joking around with one another. And we think that they're having like a really great time and that there's no issues that they're facing. But that is not always the case, because underneath, or what they do in private, could be very different. So there's a lot that comes with coming into an academic environment, learning new things, and there's all these feelings of inadequacy that sometimes you can't even tell from just looking at people. So for example, as a student, I'm not going to say that I was like super smart and did well on everything. Um, on the contrary, I was always faced at the beginning of the semester with this overwhelming sense of doubt, because I would read the syllabus and everything seems so complicated. And the first thing that always would come to my mind is, I don't think I can make it. I don't even know how this is going to be possible. So I think the picture here in the middle is the one that describes my first weeks of classes in any class, right? That it was just, I was overwhelmed. But one of the things that really helped me was to just slow down and say, okay, well, I have the rest of the semester to complete this, and we'll just take it one step at a time. And, you know, towards the middle of the semester, I was a little bit more relaxed about my capabilities. I would do well on assignments. I would do my homework, and I would prove to myself that I was capable of actually carrying this out. But then in the middle of the semester, what ended up happening to me is that that self-doubt turned into something like boredom. And I was always plagued with the question of, why am I doing this? What's the point of this? And it always happened around the middle of the semester that I had to just, I was overwhelmed, I guess, with everything. And I was just like, okay, I know I can do this, but now it's the question of, do I want to do this? And that self-doubt was something that held me back, because as soon as it kicked in, I noticed that I stopped going to class. I stopped turning in assignments until I figured things out. I went ahead and looked at myself, analyzed myself, and I went ahead and determined that my biggest challenge as a student was me. So the material was hard, but I knew I could do something about that. I could study, I could go to the tutoring center. Uh, I know that sometimes I had a lot going on, like I had, okay, let's see. Is anybody else having issues hearing me?
I hear you just fine.
Okay,
Just
Paola,
fine.
okay. I think Paola, it might be just your connection. Um, Maybe try reloading. Yeah, refreshing your browser. Okay, so as I was saying, that the biggest challenge to overcome was myself, because I started to notice that there were particular attitudes that I had and practices that I had that were actually getting in the way of my success more than anything else. Yes, I had jobs, I have family to attend to and to do things with and for, but I think it was me, right? So Once I figured out that it was me, then I started thinking of ways to overcome those challenges, which we'll talk about in a little bit, ways that you can overcome challenges. And also at the end of the semester, after I had rolled the big rock up the hill, this is Sisyphus. I don't know if anybody has heard of the myth of Sisyphus before, but it's an ancient Greek myth in which a person is forced to carry this huge boulder up a hill only to have it roll back down again, and he has to do that for all eternity as a punishment. There's a philosopher by the name of Albert Camus that talks about life as this experience that Sisyphus lives through. So that was me too, because at the end of the semester, I was so relieved that I had completed my classes. And then just thinking of having to do this again the next semester, just kind of like, again, got into like bad states of mind. So that's why this presentation came to be, because I'm sure I'm not the only one that experiences this. And I think that there's ways that we can overcome this that many people don't know about. So Louis, do you want to share your experience as a student?
Thank you, Crisol, and thank you for sharing your story. And here again, even though we're all different, we all have different experiences, we're all different individuals, we lots of times have a lot in common with each other, especially with the student experience, especially with discovering or having to undertake new things. And same here. I graduated from high school. I thought I was going to attend UTEP. Apparently my SAT scores weren't high enough. And so I was kind of summarily rejected, if you will. And so there was a lot of trepidation and self-doubt and probably a small amount of dread as to what I was going to do next. Fortunately, and this is not as much a success story of mine as it is that I share with EPCC, it was EPCC's first year ever of having classes. It was the first semester. And fortunately, the summer that I graduated coincided with EPCC opening up classes in fall of 1971. And that, I know I'm dating myself, but I found out about it. The people at UTEP were nice enough to say, "Hey, look, you may want to try El Paso Community College. They're just opening their doors." And so then the process of discovery and going learning about having to go through and get to financial aid and applying and being admitted on the one hand was daunting at the time, but it was very rewarding. And so then I was able to turn a really a Sisyphus type challenge in my estimation. Thank goodness into success, because I ended up attending EPCC, taking my first year and a half of classes with EPCC, and then continuing on. So if I can say anything about that, the good thing is that our students have a lot of similar challenges today, and maybe even some different ones, maybe even more so than we might have had looking back on it. But it's something that we can deal with. It's something that we can overcome, and it's something that we can share.
Thank you, Louis. And I think I love what you said at the end, that it's definitely something that we can overcome. And it takes a lot of introspection, a lot of planning, but I'm hoping, and we're both hoping, that what you learned today will help you with some of those challenges. Again, every person faces different challenges, so there's not a one solution that will fit everybody, but there's certain things that you can do. And again, oftentimes because of the way that we perceive others, we don't realize how much we do have in common. Even the person who's getting an A in the class, or the person who's failing the class, you might think, well, they're very different people. And of course, the person who's getting an A in the class would never experience these negative emotions, but you'd be surprised. One of the things that I want to talk to you about is something that It's called imposter syndrome, that a lot of people face, regardless of whether they have achieved their goals or not. And the reason why I want to share this with you is because that's something that even today, as an instructor, I feel. So there's always this nagging feeling that I have ever since I was a student, and it's here now, that for some reason that whatever I have to do is something that is going to be too challenging for me. And I always still experience that feeling that whatever I do is just not good enough. And I think that that's something that we can overcome. And it's one of those debilitating thoughts that I had as a student that actually like hurt me a lot. And if you're ever able to overcome it, which I think everybody can, it's something that makes your college life and just life in general less stressful. So I have a video, and it's about a 5-minute video that I would like us to watch to demonstrate just one of the many challenges that people can face, and for you to also learn that you're not alone and that there is a solution to this.
Even after writing 11 books and winning several prestigious awards, Maya Angelou couldn't escape the nagging doubt that she hadn't really earned her accomplishments. Albert Einstein experienced something similar. He described himself as an involuntary swindler whose work didn't deserve as much attention as it had received. Accomplishments at the level of Angelou's or Einstein's are rare, but their feeling of fraudulence is extremely common. Why can't so many of us shake feelings that we haven't earned our accomplishments, or that our ideas and skills aren't worthy of others' attention? Psychologist Pauline Rose Clance was the first to study this unwarranted sense of insecurity. In her work as a therapist, she noticed many of her undergraduate patients shared a concern. Though they had high grades, they didn't believe they deserved their spots at the university. Some even believed their acceptance had been an admissions error. While Clance knew these fears were unfounded, she could also remember feeling the exact same way in graduate school. She and her patients experienced something that goes by a number of names: imposter phenomenon, imposter experience, and imposter syndrome. Together with colleague Suzanne Imes, Clance first studied imposterism in female college students and faculty. Her work established pervasive feelings of fraudulence in this group. Since that first study, the same thing has been established across gender, race, age, and a huge range of occupations, though it may be more prevalent and disproportionately affect the experiences of underrepresented or disadvantaged groups. To call it a syndrome is to downplay how universal it is. It's not a disease or an abnormality, and it isn't necessarily tied to depression, anxiety, or self-esteem. Where do these feelings of fraudulence come from? People who are highly skilled or accomplished tend to think others are just as skilled. This can spiral into feelings that they don't deserve accolades and opportunities over other people. And as Angelou and Einstein experienced, there's often no threshold of accomplishment that puts these feelings to rest. Feelings of imposterism aren't restricted to highly skilled individuals either. Everyone is susceptible to a phenomenon known as pluralistic ignorance, where we each doubt ourselves privately, but believe we're alone in thinking that way because no one else voices their doubts. Since it's tough to really know how hard our peers work, how difficult they find certain tasks, or how much they doubt themselves, there's no easy way to dismiss feelings that we're less capable than the people around us. Intense feelings of imposterism can prevent people from sharing their great ideas or applying for jobs and programs where they'd excel. At least so far, the most surefire way to combat imposter syndrome is to talk about it. Many people suffering from imposter syndrome are afraid that if they ask about their performance, their fears will be confirmed. And even when they receive positive feedback, it often fails to ease feelings of fraudulence. But on the other hand, hearing that an advisor or mentor has experienced feelings of imposterism can help relieve those feelings. The same goes for peers. Even simply finding out there's a term for these feelings can be an incredible relief. Once you're aware of the phenomenon, you can combat your own imposter syndrome by collecting and revisiting positive feedback. One scientist who kept blaming herself for problems in her lab started to document the causes every time something went wrong. Eventually, she realized most of the problems came from equipment failure and came to recognize her own competence. We may never be able to banish these feelings entirely, but we can have open conversations about academic or professional challenges. With increasing awareness of how common these experiences are, perhaps we can feel freer to be frank about our feelings and build confidence in some simple truths. You have talent, you are capable, and you belong.
Thank you, Patricia, for facilitating that. So this is just, again, one of many feelings of inadequacy that maybe we are plagued as people. And it doesn't happen to just, students, and it doesn't just happen in the academic field. It happens in other areas too. So it's definitely something that can be debilitating if we let it get, control of us. But as the video you just saw said, right, there's something you can do about it. And just in terms of having this feeling stop you from taking advantage of opportunities that could end up being very helpful for you, is something that needs to be considered and evaluated. As a student, I ended up applying for a fellowship that I ended up getting, but I remember the experience. I always thought, well, why am I going to get it? There's no chance in me getting it. So I delayed applying until the very last day that the fellowship, which is like a scholarship, was due. And I was convinced that I was not going to get it. But I tried it anyway, because then I said, well, if I don't apply, then I won't get it for sure. But if I apply, then at least there's a chance. And if I don't get the scholarship, then that's fine, because I haven't lost something. I don't have it yet. So I rushed there to deliver my application, and I made it just in time. It was so stressful because I waited until the last moment, but I ended up getting it. And that can happen to us too with jobs, right? We think, oh, we're never going to get this job, or I'm never going to get this, because we feel like maybe we don't have what it takes to get it. But then you never know, you might just have what it takes to get it. So I don't know, Louis, do you want to say something about imposter syndrome?
Yes, and I think it's important to note, like as you mentioned there, Crisol, that I mean we're all human, and it's a very human thing to have that. Maybe some more than others, but I think at some point everybody kind of maybe goes through that and say, wow, I don't know that that I'm worthy of this, or I don't know that I really deserve that much credit. And so then sometimes I think we have a tendency, myself included, to be our own worst critics, for example. And so then we have that self-doubt, as you mentioned earlier. And so then I think every once in a while we have to give ourselves a reality check and a pat on the back and say, you know what, you did do it, and maybe you had help, but that's okay. You still did it, and therefore some credit is generated internally for something that you accomplish, and we need to recognize it.
Thank you, Louis. And I know it's kind of putting our audience in the spot, and you don't have to if you don't want to, but what do you all think? Like, is this something that has that you face? Does anybody want to share their story about learning? Well, now that you learned about imposter syndrome? Yes. So I'll go ahead and send the link to the video. I'll type it in the chat in a little bit. You're welcome. Okay, so, oh, there. Thank you, Patricia, for sending that. So the link to the video is in the chat. So please feel free to share it with everybody that you know. I think it's good for us to talk about it, and not to be ashamed, like the video said, right? If you have these feelings of inadequacy, that doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It is a very, very normal phenomena that even someone like Albert Einstein experienced. Okay, so the key to, yeah, so and it can be overwhelming, right? To just constantly feel like you don't belong in a place, that you're there by mistake. It can weigh on you, I think. I know it did on me, and now I still experience it, but now I know how to turn off that voice. So I think that's helpful. Like, just knowing yourself enough to where you recognize that whatever your beliefs are about yourself might not necessarily have merit. So then just it's good to listen to that self-criticism to help you improve, but you don't want to just have it debilitate you. And sometimes when I have a bad day, I'll self-indulge and I'll let those voices run. And then at some point, I'll just say, okay, enough of this. I need to get to work. And then that has been really helpful. Okay, so then I will turn it over to Louis. He's going to go ahead and guide you through some ways in which you can take the challenges that you face, not just in school, but in life, and turn them into opportunities and something positive.
Thank you, Crisol. And when we first decided to put this together, and Crisol was nice enough to welcome me into this project, she talked about strategies. What are some things that you can aim for, or try, or put into motion that would help you with various challenges that we come across. And so then, as we already have recognized, what are some of the challenges of being a student, of being an adult, of being a parent, being an employee. There's challenges all the time. So it's noted that obstacles are often the path to great success and achievement, because once you apply yourself to overcoming them, hopefully you learn something. And if nothing else, you've learned to overcome the obstacle itself. So one thing I think is important is, if you cannot change something, try changing the way you think or react to it. And so then it's something that may seem monumental, a challenge, a hiccup, a bump in the road. If you think of it that way, then and you focus on what it is, that may prevent you from doing anything. So then think about something else. Think about how you're going to react to it. Try changing your approach, how you think about it. Okay, and so then there's three things to keep in mind when you're trying to overcome obstacles, right? And then one of them is, you have to have the ability to perceive the situation accurately. In other words, is this really is this a hurricane, or is this a West Texas dust storm? Okay, and so then if it's a West Texas dust storm, I can survive that. I can overcome that. And so our perception then is everything. Everybody's perception is different, but everybody's perception can also be very similar. So perceive the situation accurately. Is this a problem? How big a problem is it? It's not the end of the world. And so therefore you start from there, right? And therefore, once you recognize that, then you can act and respond intelligently. Okay, because intelligent actions are most likely to lead you to overcome what the problem is or the situation is. It's okay to get a little emotional about it, but as long as we don't focus on the emotion and let that override what the intelligent thing to do is, what the intellectual thing to do is, then we're not going to get anywhere. We're basically going to put ourselves in a box with no exit. And so you have to think about, okay, what is this? I recognize what it is. It really bothers me, and I'm going to worry about it all day. And you don't want to get sick about it. And so then what can I do about it? And so then you start focusing on that. What do I need to do? Right? Accept the situation. That's huge. Accept the situation, the obstacle, and you have to persevere. You have to make the decision intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, to persevere. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to find a way. All right? And so then that has been in our nature since we were creatures on this earth: fight or flight, deal with it or escape from it, embrace it or push it away. And so what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to fight, and I don't mean in a violent way, but fight. You're going to do what you need to do, and you're going to embrace it, and you're going to own it, and you're going to deal with it, and you're going to go and you're going to move ahead. It may not happen instantly, it may not happen overnight, depending on the obstacle, but it can be done. So you have to make up your mind. And then it takes willpower. You know, you have to be resolved. You have to resign yourself to the fact that you're going to make a change, that you're going to do whatever it takes to overcome it. Anybody have any questions so far?
So no questions, Louis, but I would like to add something to what you were saying. I love that you use the comparison of whether it's a dust storm or a hurricane, because sometimes dust storms do feel like hurricanes. And even though it might be something that is very small, like the fact that your car broke down, that to us sometimes can feel like a hurricane, and it could just like make us feel like there's no way out of this. But then once you analyze everything, you can start thinking of possible solutions to that. So that would happen to me too. Like there would be times when my car would break down and I wouldn't have a way to get to class. So then one way to turn that challenge into an opportunity is by saying, okay, well, how else can I get to class? Well, there's options, right? I can walk, I can take the bus, I can carpool, and that leads you to explore the environment around you and to look at the resources available. So I would sometimes take the bus, and sometimes, you know, they wouldn't be on time. So then that would be a challenge. And then I learned how to overcome that challenge, but maybe taking an earlier, like a little, the earlier bus to get there on time. So I mean, there's that, right? We need to really understand what is truly going on so that we can find proactive solutions to our challenges. And I remember that in college, one of the greatest advices that was given to me by one of my instructors, he was a psychology instructor. He just sat me in his office and he said, I just want you to know that there's going to be times where life is going to get difficult, and you're gonna feel like you're not gonna make it, and you're gonna be really just feel really down. But just know that as bad as those emotions are, they will pass. And sometimes in the case of hurricanes, all you have to do is take shelter and just let the storm pass. And then once that happens, then you'll be ready to move on.
Excellent, Crystal. Thanks for sharing that, and I totally concur with that. I mean, it's something that's temporary. Sometimes we have a tendency to think of it as being a permanent situation or a long-term situation, but when it's happening, it's huge, though, right? As you said, until you figure out, you know, what am I going to do, and sometimes that takes a little time and effort.
Okay. So any questions for Louis? Sorry for interrupting.
Okay, so one of the other things that we look at in terms of strategies, and when we go over these are tried and true, and they're proffered by the experts in the fields of dealing with these types of situations. Don't think that it's got to be one or the other. There's many techniques, many ways to approach things, and one of the ones that I found in doing some research, and most of this, as you're going to find out here in a few minutes here, is all common sense, and it's called the resource method. In other words, thinking of resources, what's available to you as a student, as a faculty member, as whatever, as a parent. And I found that this one was particularly impactful when we're talking about obstacles and challenges and their resolution. We start with relying on family and friends. Who's your team? Who's on your team? Who can you turn to? Right? And so then some of your references, your familiar available resources. If you're a student, hopefully there's somebody that's in your corner that you can turn to and rely on them for information. Sometimes it's a good friend. Sometimes it's a family member who's been through the college experience, for example. And then, of course, there's always your faculty members. I happen to think very highly of my fellow EPCC faculty members because I know that they care about their students, and that's what makes EPCC such a unique and wonderful college experience. Exchange ideas with others. Hey, how do you do this? Talk to your fellow students. Talk to, like I say, individuals that are in a similar situation as yourself. Exchange information, communicate, get ideas. Hey, what did you do when this happened? How would you go about studying this, for example? Or hey, who did you talk to about the financial aid, and so on. I heard Professor Escobedo talk about a fellowship the other day. How do you get one of those? And so exchanging information, seeking professional help, searching your resources. And we're going to talk a lot about resources here at the end. We're going to offer you some contact information. So where do you go to get that information? All right. You'll have to excuse the construction noise in the background here. And so then get organized. And one of the wonderful ways to organize yourself, and I'm sure you know this already, I'm not telling you anything new, but is our smartphones. Usually most of them have a calendar. Organize your activities. What is it I need to do today? What is it I need to do tomorrow? What is due next week, for example? And so if you get organized, that will help ease a lot of that stress. It'll help ease a lot of those misgivings about time management and use it to your advantage. All right. Organize your daily activities, even if it's one thing at a time. All right. Use positive self-talk. All right. As I mentioned before, and Crisol mentioned, we have a tendency to be our worst critics, right? And so then give yourself a pep talk once in a while. I do that on my phone sometimes, okay? Hey, Lou, tomorrow you need to do this, and I'll put a reminder and a time on my calendar there. It says, hey, you got this, or something like that. Seek out motivational or inspirational input, right? Such as what we're offering here in this presentation. Reframe the situation positively. As I mentioned in the first slide there, the way you look at it, the way you process it and view it, reframe it. Try to put it in a positive note if you can. Hey, this happened, as Crisol mentioned. My car broke down. She dealt with the problem. She found out that there was other ways. She learned how to use the bus possibly. Okay, that I rode a bus many times growing up. Rethink the situation positively. What's the right thing to do? How am I going to get through this? Come up with some solutions. And of course, change your usual reaction. And that's a tough one because we're all human. And so something happens, something occurs, something presents a challenge or a possible obstacle. We have a tendency to look at it a different way. Our reaction is going to be somewhat learned, self-learned. And so therefore we apply that reaction. Change from your usual reaction. Maybe some of these resources and methods here can be employed. Think in terms of how can I make this different? And of course, always explore new ways. What else can I do? Learn. Don't be shy to learn something new. Find out a new way to do it. Maybe take up tutoring. Oh, I don't like tutoring. I don't need a tutor. I can do this on my own. I can read. I can study. I can do whatever I need. But maybe something as simple as going to a tutor, going to the free tutoring, for example. Explore new ways. What else is different? How can I do this in a different way, in a better way, in a positive way? Did you have any comments on that, Crisol?
No, I'm good.
All right. Any comments from the attendees? Anybody? Raise your hand. Thank you. Okay, Diego, you had a question. Go ahead and turn on your mic.
Oh yeah, just a question. So like, what are some factors that could affect like the feelings of like the like the feeling of being an imposter? Like, what are some factors that could affect that?
You want to handle this one, Crisol?
Yeah, I'll handle this one. So there's many factors that can get or that can bring about that feeling. Sometimes, as the video mentioned, right, just feeling like you don't belong, like, or if you don't look like everybody else in the group, it could bring about those feelings. There's something else that we don't talk about or we haven't talked about in this presentation called stereotype threat. So we associate ourselves with different groups, right? And we also we are aware of the stereotypes connected with that group. So the fact that we belong to that group oftentimes brings about those feelings of inadequacy. I'll give you an example. So I lived in many places all over the world. Well, that sounds like a bit of an exaggeration, but I lived outside the US and I've lived in various places in the US. And in some of those places, you know, being Hispanic is not the norm, which is not the case here in El Paso. So oftentimes I would go into a place and I would recognize that the fact that I was Hispanic, in the eyes of people, mistakenly meant a lot of things, right? It meant, and depending on who the person was, could mean something positive, like the fact that I was a hard worker, or it could be something negative, like being associated with illegal activities. So whenever I would walk into a room, I would always have that cloud over me thinking, okay, how are people going to judge me? What are they thinking of me? And it doesn't have to be related to race. It could be something related to economic status too. So for example, I'll use myself as well as an example. I don't come from a rich family. Like my family was, you know, just came from very low economic means. And also, you know, being educated and everything wasn't something that was part of the family tradition. My mom didn't finish school past elementary school. It wasn't until later she got her GED. So when I walk into a room to this day with other people, like other professors and others, like, you know, my other colleagues, I start feeling a little bit inadequate because I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm coming from a family where people are traditionally not educated. I'm coming from a family where we're not rich. And there's all these people here in this room that have very nice clothing, that look like they are people of means. And already just noticing that difference creates a feeling of insecurity. But then that's not really what we should be doing when we walk into a room, right? We shouldn't be really afraid of how people are going to see us, how people are going to judge us. It's more about the behavior that we display that, you know, makes us who we are, among other factors, of course. So I think, you know, just feeling like an outcast brings about those feelings of inferiority and the imposter syndrome. But oftentimes it's just us turning dust storms into hurricanes. Sometimes it's not the case, but many times it will be.
All right,
Theo,
thank
does
you,
that
teacher.
answer your question?
What?
Does that answer
Oh,
your question?
yes, that answered my question. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, so I know we don't have a lot of time, but what we want to talk about is your challenges. So you, as individuals, face a lot of challenges. And just type it in the chat. Just let us know, what kind of challenges do you face? You don't have to give a whole story. Just type it in the chat. Okay, paying for UTEP. Yeah, UTEP is expensive. Well, not as expensive as others, right? And just in case you don't know how to use the chat, there's a purple tab. Oh, there we go. Yeah, managing work, life, school, that's tough. Not performing as well as you want to, that's right. Understanding time management, okay, definitely. A lot of this time management. Actually, I was doing some research and it turns out that among students, the #1 reported problem is time management because of everything going on in our lives. Self-doubt, yes. Anxiety, yeah, that's a big one. Stress, yeah. And no, right? These are very common among students and among other people too. So now what Louis is going to show us how to do, yeah, fighting yourself. That was a big one for me too, just fighting myself to focus. Yeah, that's tough. Full-time job, 5 classes, and working out to reach your goals. And then some of you have kids, so add all that into the mix, and yeah, it's understandable. There's a lot going on. And a lot of times we see grades as a reflections of our intelligence, right? So whenever we don't get the grades that we want, that casts a lot of self-doubt in us. But one of the things you should know is that your grades don't necessarily represent how you understand the material. It's just how you test about the material that could be the issue. So a lot of times all these different issues are getting in the way. So Louis is going to guide us through some steps that you can take to turn those challenges into opportunities. So Louis.
Okay. Wow. And here again, if I don't know if it's any consolation for our attendees, for the students, but if it's any consolation, I think we've all, again, gone through some of those ourselves and experienced those. And I hate to admit it, but sometimes they continue with you through life, and sometimes very well into the careers that you choose. But the way to go about it, and it's recommended, is you can only do one thing at a time. And we'll go through this real quick. I mean, when you start to bake a cake, you don't just snap your fingers and it's all done at once. You have to go through these steps. And so choose one challenge, one goal from your list. And so then decide, is it something I need to do now, or is it something that I can work on and do later? So choose one challenge at a time and address it if you can. Then list everything you need to do to meet that challenge. And you may find out that, you know what, under the circumstances, I just decided that maybe I can put this aside for now and move on to the next one. Or you can resolve it and get it done, get it out of the way. So if you're not sure what to do exactly, research, find out, ask. Here again, that networking, ask somebody that knows if you can find them, and if not, find out who does, and figure out how to go about meeting that challenge and taking steps to resolve it. Brainstorm, anticipate any possible obstacles in your, not only in your challenge but in your response. So what's one of the things that we think about is look ahead if you can, and try to anticipate to the extent that you can. Okay, so if I try to do this, if this is what I'm going to do, this is my first step, if this is my strategy to resolve this, what can possibly go wrong, to the extent that you can. Of course, you can't predict everything, but try to anticipate, okay, well, if I ask them this and they say that, then what am I going to do then? And so then brainstorm and anticipate. Also, address your obstacles one at a time with your strategies. Right? Just go through there and look at them. And I'm a big believer in lists. Make a list. I'm also a big believer in, getting a sheet of paper and saying, okay, I have this to do. I have this as a situation. Here's the positive side. I put a plus sign. Here's a minus. Here's a negative sign. I go down and I put down positives and negatives about different things, different aspects of a situation. Okay. Sometimes if you work on one obstacle, it actually helps and fixes other obstacles that you have. And so then the chain effect may trickle down to fixing a situation with another obstacle that you might have encountered. Put your strategies into motion. Everything's good. You can write things down. You can plan. You can manage your time. But then if you're going to do that, you have to take that action. You have to put it into motion. Assess your strategy and be willing to be flexible. Hey, you look at it and you say, you know what? This isn't working. Let me try something else. What else can I do? And so then you pretty much revert back to step number 2. Okay. And number 3, and figure out, don't be afraid to look at it and say, you know what, I want to change this. Instead of this, I want to do this. And then come up with a strategy or a different way. Or if the strategy is successful, maybe I can apply the same strategy to another obstacle, to another challenge. Any questions on any of this? Anybody have any success stories where they did this, perhaps, or different ways to approach this? Don't hesitate to raise your hand. Priscilla, do you have anything to add?
No, I think this covers it. I think I've used some of these strategies, if not all of these strategies myself. So I think this is really comprehensive. Yeah, I like lists too.
Very well.
Also, to stress what you said, reaching out to people. You'd be surprised how many times just taking that step to ask someone can open so many doors. And just know that a lot of the teachers you have are willing to help out, and all you have to do is reach out. Connecting to people is something that's going to make things a lot easier. It's one of the resources tips, right? The first one. So having that as your support, whether it be family, friends, or just a teacher or just classmates, that can make a whole difference, like a lot of difference.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hopefully, we all have at least one person in our corner that we can ask or find out information from. Somebody that's done it before. I mean, those that have gone before us have a value of information and ways and methods, or even things to consider. You may or may not use what they say or what they offer in form of in terms of a solution, but it may set you thinking about something else and lead you to another path that you may want to take. Okay. Oops. And here again, I'll just end this portion. Students, we have so many different resources and so many different departments at EPCC, for example, that offer students all sorts of wonderful resources, everything from computers to tutoring to preparing for exams, you name it. There's a lot out there, and fortunately, they put it in the form of a student handbook. And if you take the time to just thumb through that handbook, there may be some at least contact information, some information in that handbook that'll point you in the right direction, if not answering your question altogether. Also, recently they came out with a help sheet, helpful contacts. On the right there of the slide, you can see that there's numbers, contact information, for students and probably faculty alike for all sorts of resources that are available to you. So sometimes this information, and myself included, is at our fingertips. And for example, there's even a faculty handbook. And so, that information is right there already. You don't have to work for it. All you got to do is look at it and find it. And hopefully there's something on there that'll help you resolve your situation or help point you in the right direction when you've got something you need to work on.
And some more resources for you. So as we mentioned, we're giving this presentation as members of the Mental Health Committee that we have here at EPCC. So that's the QR code. So if you scan it, it will take us to our website, and you will have to use your username and password to log in. It's the same one you use to log on to Blackboard or your email account. But there's a lot of there's a big list of resources there for you, and not just in terms of like who you can contact in the community, but also here at EPCC. And yeah, we offer things like support groups for students. We're working on even getting mental health first aid training available for students, for those of you who actually deal with someone who has a mental health condition. So there's help. So that's a very good question. To my knowledge, we don't have student members yet, but we don't have it in our clause that students cannot be part of the EPCC Mental Health Committee. So it's open to everybody. So you'll find administrators, faculty, staff, and there's a student club that always helps out with our activities. So yeah, I mean, we don't have a student member because usually students don't come forward. They want to be part of the committee. But yeah, if you're interested in being part of the committee, please contact either Christian Salas or Karen Van Hout, or you can contact me too, or Louis.
Absolutely. Any questions from anybody? Does anybody have anything? This is a good time to raise your hand. Any comments? Any feedback for us? Raise your hand.
Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you, Patricia.
The struggle is real. I have a coffee mug that says that too. The struggle is real.
Yeah, and I think that's what binds us as individuals. The fact that we're all experiencing the human experience, and so then we can. There's always help. There's always somebody there that we can help each other out and find a way. And if I can't do it or you can't do it, then maybe we can point you in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And these are some of our sources. So yeah, thank you. Thank you. If there are no questions, thank you so much for joining us. If you are one of my students, please remember to send me a Blackboard course message so I can give you the extra credit assignment connected to this. Thank you, Yair. Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you. Is there any further questions for Ms. Escobedo or Mr. Barragan? If not, before I let you go, I'd like to invite you all to next week's session. We are going to have, share right now, lots of thank yous in the chats, by the way. Okay, so next week, we're going to, in the same link, we're going to be having Happy Math Hour at 11 a.m. They'll be going over properties of logarithms and exponential equations for Math 1314. And for Math 1324, they'll be going over basic matrix operations and inverses. And then at 1 o'clock at this link, we'll be having a session with health and fitness. So come check us out. But until then, we'd like to thank you all for joining us today. And we hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much.